All right, welcome to the Delivered podcast. Today we are very, very excited to be talking to Kim Sullivan. Kim has over 20 years of technical and product management experience. She has time spent at backcountry.com, which is local to our headquarters at Cartograph here in Utah. So very exciting there, connection there. And she was a product manager there and actually helped to transition backcountry.com to Agile, which is not an easy feat. I would love to dig in there a little bit and hear more about that. And one of the reasons I'm most excited to talk to Kim is, we connected a number of months ago at a kind of a product design conference. And she's one of the first people that I have met and connected with that's really focused on product delivery specifically. She's a product delivery specialist. It's things she's been thinking about throughout her career, and she really has some great insight into how to do product delivery well. Things that are easy, that don't cost money, but help teams to manage that process well. So really excited to dig in. Kim, thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Bentley.
Absolutely. So Kim, one of the things I want to start off with you, a little bit different than kind of a standard interview that I've done, is I want to kick it off with you and have you define product delivery for us and for the audience. It's something, obviously, like I just said, you think about a lot. I'd love to hear kind of, how do you define product delivery? What does that mean? And what does it mean to kind of own that process and manage it?
Well, that's a fun question for me. I only recently decided that that's my specialty. I've played a number of roles, and I guess I've formed a passion for product delivery over the last couple decades. I sound old saying that, but yeah, the past 2 decades. And where I've landed is delivery is, I look at it as a curation of people, processes, and tools. And you basically curate the right mix to efficiently deliver software products from ideation all the way to post-launch learnings, but with an eye on quality and impact and minimal waste. And I believe anyone could play the role of a delivery manager. So it could be a project manager, it could be a product manager, it could be a tech lead. Really, anyone could play the part to make sure delivery is on point. But I look at that role as an enabler, not a boss or a manager. So you're really trying to enable the team and remove hurdles. And it covers aspects such as risk management, team and structure, prioritization across the board. So I was saying prioritize everything. So you're prioritizing your meetings, your scope, really everything to make sure you're not overdoing it in any one area and you're honestly doing the minimum amount of work. And then you help determine approach. And most importantly, something that you and I really connected on was it's about expectations. So if you communicate effectively, you can be successful at product delivery, because as long as people know what to expect and when, then in their eyes, you can be successful as long as they buy into when you have to make changes. So communication is a huge part of delivery.
Totally. That was so thorough and awesome. I made a mental note to come back and watch that. And it's because I was like, okay, I'm learning things here. This is awesome. So thank you for that. Yeah, I want to hit on that, and I'm so glad you brought up that expectations. And I'm impressed that you remembered that that's something that I care a lot about, because you're absolutely right. For me, I started more on the technical side, and I got to participate in technical teams, building products, really building products, but it's building a small part of a feature, at companies and things like that. But that was my experience, kind of my first foray really in my career. And I did that for a number of years. But for me, it was so hard to have a project go very well and have everybody involved, stakeholders, everybody feel like, yeah, that was successful, right? And, throughout the early part of my career, it was like, I got to play different roles and kind of eventually moved into kind of a PM role in certain scenarios. And no matter what, it just felt like I could not make it so that everybody felt really good at the end of a project, right? And That's kind of where my focus on expectations comes from, because I kind of had this, it felt like an epiphany to me at the time, but I had this epiphany where I said, hey, if I just set better expectations, right? Whether it's from individual contributor level or PM level or executive level, whatever it might be. If I set better expectations, then everyone can be happy, right? All the other stakeholders can be happy. Engineers can be happy, because as long as we set expectations and meet them, then, there can't be any reason why anyone's, not excited or happy about the outcome. And that was kind of my first kind of like, okay, this is really what managing delivery is about, is when they get delivered the thing or the outcome they were looking for, is it what they expected? Is it what I communicated to them or understood from what they wanted at the beginning? And so to me, my first, I tell that story because that's my first foray into like, this is what delivery means, is setting and meeting expectations and that communication aspect, right? And so, yeah, I would love to learn more, especially in some of your experiences where you've helped implement Agile, because in my experience, talking more with Agile aficionados and people who are very still today in depth and involved and love Agile, it often comes across to me that it's been implemented or studied or whatever to try to get delivery, to try to do delivery better, I guess, for lack of a better way to say that. Has that been your experience? Is that why you feel like Agile was so popular for quite a long time and even still today?
Well, I think Agile from the highest level was very positive, right? It's about adaptability, which is one of my key mindsets that you have for delivery. It's about being flexible. It's about leadership, understanding that coming up with a hard date in software developments, of course, there's a time and a place for that, but that's a really hard thing to do. If you have good data, it helps it, right? Cue cartograph. But when it comes down to it, I think we probably swung too far. And then all of a sudden it's like, we have to adhere to these practices. And what was meeting light turned into meeting heavy. And now I wouldn't say I'm opposed to Agile by any means. I love some of the principles and practices from it, but I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a champion. I had a company that wanted me to be a champion of Agile, and it just wasn't me. I just want to get shit done, right? I want to do it efficiently, and I want to make sure the team's happy and motivated and understand why they're being asked for things and deliver the right impact. And I think it's easy to get bogged down into, we have to follow these specific frameworks, because then, in a way, it's somewhat solution bias, right? Like in product management, you have a bias for a particular framework that might not fit and might not fit the product, like hardware. I've worked at some data warehouse companies, some IoT places, and you can't necessarily be Agile, right? And so, or big migrations. I've done a lot of huge migrations, and it's hard to be Agile with that. So, I think we swung too far. And again, I think it's about any methodology, just taking those principles and practices that are helpful to your unique environment. And that's why I use the word curate. And then I think it could be really powerful. And there are places where adhering to those practices, to a T is valuable, but I would say more often than not, that's not the case.
I absolutely love that mindset. And really what comes to mind is just balance, right? Just balance. It's even better word is curate, like you said, just curating and even kind of what came to my mind is just depending on the scope of the work and the project and the context and maybe even the engineers you're working with or whatever it might be, right? Use whatever tools in your tool belt you need to be able to get it, get the outcome you're looking for. But as also that mindset of we just want to get work done, right? Like at the end of the day, all these processes and methodologies and theories and things like that are only there to help us essentially work more productively or more efficiently, right? And what's interesting is that I often feel my experience with Agile and some of those frameworks, like you're saying, right, where we swung a little too far, is they're getting in the way of not only management, and they're used as a scapegoat sometimes, but they're most maybe most importantly, they get in the way of engineers, and engineers are asked to do extra things outside the workflow. Maybe 15 to 20% of their time is spent on these kind of maintaining the process, making sure we're checking all the boxes off. That doesn't actually impact progress, on a project. And that's really tough. It's hard to justify that much time and energy being spent on something that doesn't actually serve progress. And so, I've kind of grown and evolved to a point where I really feel like whatever your process is to organize around a common goal and deliver something, it should kind of innately live inside of the workflow. It should be part of it. It should feel like engineers should feel, as much as possible, they should feel like they don't even realize there is a process, right? This is something that needs to happen in order for us all to progress. And that's one area where, for Cartograph, we kind of said, if we're going to build something that helps people better understand their actual, roadmap and delivery and what that's going to look like using data, it has to not interrupt engineering teams. It can't bother them. It can't require them to input anything. We've got to use existing data. And it's really because of what you just said. It's because we don't want to create more of a burden on teams or on anybody, really. It just needs to say, it just needed to be more focused on getting the work done, like you said. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to react to that. So, I might compare it to like trimming the fat, right? Like I'm all about, let's trim as much fat as we can, right? Yeah. I call it minimum viable everything, right? So do the minimum possible, which it sounds kind of like a slacker mentality, but it's not intended to. It's really, let's do only what we need to do so we don't have waste, right? Whether it's code, whether it's our time, whether it's an artifact that no one reads, it's always keeping an eye on how can we trim the fat. And I mean, that's essentially running lean. But so the company that I'm currently at, my company is called Codingscape, and we're a custom software development shop. And we have very senior staff. And what's really cool about that is you can run a lot lighter and less prescriptive because they're senior, they can fill in the holes. I think when you're operating with a team that has more junior engineers, or right, someone who's training to be a product manager, or it's their first time as a scrum master, right, you might need to be a little bit more detailed, right? You might want to do the 2-week sprints. You might want to do planning poker, where, right, you get a shared understanding of the stories that you're going to tackle in the next 2 weeks. So that way everyone can ask questions, and, more junior engineers can hear from the more senior engineers. So there's a time and place for it. So it really does come back to curation depending on the team and the product. But I'm all about trimming as much as we can, minimum viable everything.
I love that. I sometimes get flack from my team from like wanting to oversimplify everything. And I overcorrect on it a little bit, I'm willing to admit, but I do love that mentality of like, let's just run lean. Let's only do what we need to do. And one thought that came to my mind is I recently had a conversation with the CTO, very seasoned guy, really impressive career. And he talked about this idea, right? When you have a really senior team, the planning and managing delivery and making sure that we feel good about capacity and using data more than people's opinions, it matters most when you have a more junior team, right? Sometimes there is value in having tools to be able to manage those things with senior teams, but there's no question that you feel a lot more secure, and really the word I want to get to is trust. There's just so much trust amongst a team that has been together for a long time, right? Where they kind of, one person says, hey, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm thinking. People take them at their word and say, yeah, I've seen you do that. You've said that before and I've seen you do it. And so I can trust you because my work's dependent on yours, and et cetera, and there's just so much trust. At the end of the day, it really is about trust, right? Managing delivery well, it's helping go-to-market teams trust product teams. It's helping executives trust product and engineering teams, right? It's helping product and engineering teams trust go-to-market and executives that they won't, that there won't be this backlash if certain happen or whatever. It's really trying to drive trust, and that's one thing I've been really grateful to learn more about and from our customers' perspectives, they're often trying to quote unquote buy trust when they're engaging with us, because they're trying to say, look, there's too much tension here between go-to-market and product development. And, we really feel like we have great people, but there's commitments that get made that are, there's estimates that get made that are not commitments, but then they're taken as commitments. Right. And there's not a collaborative environment. And, engineering wants to be able to show, hey, we're kind of overworked and we probably should be prioritizing better if you want better outcomes. And go-to-market wants, things that are like, hey, if we're going to estimate and if our customers are asking for timelines, let's, feel good about those things. And so it's just really this give and take. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to, can we trust each other and get things done? And that's such a breath of fresh air for you and your, or I assume it is, because when you have a team that is senior, that's been together, that can trust each other, it really is a game-changing environment. And
game-changing. Right. And going back to building trust, I think that comes back to what we talked about at the beginning about setting expectations, right? If you set expectations and you meet expectations, people trust you. So it all kind of comes back around. But yeah, to get to the question, having a senior team is fantastic, because you could rely on them to fill in the holes and honestly run with things if you're not around, right? Like, you're not a critical player. I mean, yes, you're part of the team, but knowing that anyone on the team could speak to, status or why we're building something, or make a decision if you're out of the office. It does make product managers' jobs a lot smoother.
Totally. Well, and you almost are doing delivery together, right? Everyone on your team has been there, done that a little bit, and they understand the importance of, like, the most senior CTOs that are beloved, at least by the people that I know that they've worked with. And often their delivery is one of their top priorities, right? This same CTO I was just mentioning, he talked about, he's like, at the end of the day, I really don't care how much code gets written. I don't care the makeup of the team. I don't care about any of it. He's like, I just want to deliver value to customers and back up my sales team. And that was such a cool thing to hear him talk about, is he just wanted to have his sales teams back, right? If they're learning about, if they're hearing certain things from customers, like something doesn't work as well as it should, or they really need an extra little feature to get the full value or whatever it is, right? He wants to be able to just knock those things out of the park and say, give the sales team all this evidence of here's why we're an awesome vendor, right? We're going to serve you. We're going to try to create the value. And that's the kind of relationship you want, right? And between teams. So, anyway, yeah, I totally concur with everything you're saying around trust and teams that are able to rely on one another. That's one thing I also talk about, right, a lot is really doing product delivery well. It creates more reliability, right? And reliability, for an executive team, is gold. It's next level for them to be I can ask for certain things, or I can ask for a report on something, and I can rely or believe and trust that what they're saying is going to happen. So I'd love to ask you, as far as those topics go, how have you engendered those things, right? Product delivery, as far as tools that help you manage product delivery, are fairly nascent. Obviously been tools like Jira or analytics tools or DevOpsy, analytics tools. But to kind of stay away from that conversation, because it could get self-serving very quickly, because I could just promote Cartograph and I won't do that too much. But what are some of the other processes and things you've done, actual, to use an agile term, artifacts, right, that you've used to try to help create more predictability and more reliability and more trust? What are some of those things you've done?
So it's a good question, right? Because it's a big debate, right? Do you estimate? To what degree, right? How do you get actual data to then support, your future projections? I don't do anything that's rocket science, honestly, but I try to, in the MV everything spirit, do as little as possible, because estimation takes up engineering time. And when you're taking up engineering time, when the whole team has to be there to estimate everything, you lose hours of their focus, and they don't enjoy it most of the time, right? So I tend to stick to very high level estimation. So at the beginning of a project, while we're planning and maybe coding's going on, right? Obviously you could do that in parallel, but I'll just basically have the fewest number of team members in a high level estimation session for like an epic level or the highest level kind of categories. So, let's say you have 10 epics for simplicity, right? I might, if we have a tech lead, ask a tech lead, hey, do you have enough context for this? Do you feel experienced enough to just kind of swag these? And, you could use any sort of, you could use days, hours, Fibonacci, t-shirt sizes. Most recently, I've done dog sizing, where it's like anything from like a Chihuahua to a Mastiff. So you try to make it fun, and then right at the end, you kind of relate those dog sizes to time, and you just come up with your best guess. And I'm all about having a being fairly broad until you get closer to delivery time, and then your timeframes get more granular. So, right, it start at the quarter level, then you go down to the month level, then you go down to week level, then you go down to date, like pretty close to actual delivery time. So, as loose as I can be early on, that's how loose I'll be in terms of setting timeframes and expectations. Some places, right, you have to do, they want to do, okay, so then I'll pick the last day of the quarter or the last day of the month, right? And that's fine, obviously with padding and all that.
Right.
And then you start, right, development, and then there's this concept of like recalibrating your plan. So I'll recalibrate only when I have to, and or when we've made significant progress. So let's say project's very smooth, right? No scope changes, no resource shifts. Then, like, I don't know, every couple weeks, depending on how long the project is, I'll go back and say, okay, what if we complete it? What does that do to the remaining time? But again, it's still just at the high level. It's never at the story level. And then it's really just to kind of validate how you're tracking. Are you tracking to plan? And even if you're tracking behind, I don't necessarily reset a time frame. Like I might just say we're tracking a 3-week delay. But you might not reset it if you know you're going to make up ground later, or you know that there's scope you could cut. And then for projects that aren't going super smooth, then I recalibrate whenever that happens, right? New scope comes in, new players come in, players leave, and then you have to recalibrate, because then your overall right formula is wrong and your assumptions are wrong. So like, I mean, I could do it in Google Sheets, honestly. It's like, it's pretty high level and simple. And then use actuals where we can. So two companies ago, we actually used hours and Airtable. And you do it that way, and I would have actuals because they actually logged hours, and it was the most granular I've ever done, but it was something that was already established and what was preferred, so I kind of went with it. And then, my most recent engagement, I've been able to stay away from estimating every story. So in that case, right, no data really helps so much as like, is this milestone complete? Is this epic complete? Right. And then you recalibrate. So you recalibrate anywhere from 1 to 5 times in a project, and it's about setting expectations early. And if you know you're going to be passed, then it's, hey, talk to the right people, come up with options on how you could pull it back in if you need to hit a hard date, or you present those options, to the customer or the stakeholder, management, whoever, and decide, what's your go forward plan.
How are you working with engineers to kind of know when recalibration needs to happen? Because there's the obvious times when maybe there's another request from a client or whatever it is, or like you said, a key player leaves or something like that. But one piece of feedback I got was that often engineers they kind of think I can, I'm kind of behind, but I can burn both ends of the candlestick this week and get back on track. And then sometimes that doesn't work out, and then we're only 2 weeks out from our our kind of commitment. And I've got to, as an engineer, I've got to kind of tell my team lead that, hey, I'm not going to hit. And so how are you, because it's such an important point that as early on as possible, we need to know if recalibration needs to happen. What's that like, that communication with engineers to kind of know when that needs to happen?
So I base it often on deliverables that we plan, right? So people could call it milestones, whatever you want to call it. But this concept of there's always a check-in. So even if you're not running 2-week sprints for demos at the end of the 2 weeks, you're delivering something. Maybe it's behind a feature flag, maybe it's going live, maybe it's just a Loom video of your local environment, but you're delivering something. And if you're basically not hitting those deliverables, then you're behind. So you need to have a lot of them, right? I mean, if you have a 6-month project, you might have a deliverable, monthly. You might have a deliverable weekly. I mean, it just depends on what the stakeholder or the client or customer wants. And I really use that to know, right? Like if no variables change, the project management triangle is like staying the same, then it's just hey team, we have this deliverable in 2 weeks. We're going to hit it, right? And even if they're like, yeah, I think we are, like there's some concern, okay. Like I kind of, go with the team's gut the first time around. And then the second time around, it's like the second I know we're not going to hit those deliverables, and it's time to recalibrate.
I love that. And I love, because I feel like there's definitely room for more of that, because engineers, I think in my experience and working with our technical team, engineers love to show progress. They love to say, hey, look, I implemented that new little design for this button or something like that. I love to show stuff personally like that. Like we have portfolios in our product, and we changed them from a list view to like an actual portfolio, card icon. And it was like a dumb thing by any standard, but it's just fun. And our engineering team was like, hey, everyone, look, and so I love that you really focus on that and kind of provide space to say, hey, show us your progress. Because I think for you, having the vision of where the project is supposed to end up, you're able to say, okay, we're only there, or you know what I mean? Like that's
right.
Great, but we need maybe a little more progress. Do you still feel confident? And I don't know, it just strikes me as a great way to have a positive check-in environment, rather than this, hey, are you going to hit kind of, strict, rigid environment. So that seems really awesome.
Yeah. And videos are great, I have to say. I'm not trying to be an ad for Loom, but this, idea of, you don't have to get everyone together, right? Like maybe at the beginning of a project or when there's something substantial, but like, it's just hey, here's the latest. This is what I said I'm going to deliver. Here's kind of the issues you could see right now. I think another really important thing is getting it into an environment that everyone could access, right? The full team, product managers, even stakeholders, even a subset of customers. So feature flags are so important, because then you don't even need to do the Loom video. It's just like, this has been released, you can play with it, go nuts, right? And so there is some that's a gut check too, after years of experience of delivering software. But with those frequent deliverables, I said at my last client that I was at, it was like, yeah, let's not do story estimation, right? Like I just came from an environment that wanted to do hours tracking. It was like, let's just not do it. And I always said, okay, if we don't hit our deliverables, then we got to start this, right? And it's been 2.5 years, and we've still been hitting our deliverables. So, I think that's where you got to be flexible. If they're not, and maybe the stories aren't clear, maybe you need to have that thorough conversation up front to do the estimation. But again, with Codingscape, there's a lot of senior team members, and so I think it's easier to run Kanban, Scrumban, or Lean, however you want to do it.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's so awesome. And I think that's such a great point, and kind of even connects with some of our conversation about trust and expectations, creating a really positive environment for teams, and honestly for the org as a whole, in building product and delivering value. That's really at the core of it, right? you've got to be like any sports team, any successful sports team, right? Feels like they always have the best culture as well as, some of the best players. And if you have great players and bad culture, there's really not a ton of success that's going to be had, Anyway, Kim, thank you so much for the time. This has been a ton of fun. You always seriously have a wealth of knowledge to share, and I feel like I've always learned a lot from you. I look forward to future conversations and having you on again. Anything you'd like to share, you can find Kim on LinkedIn, connect with her. She's awesome. She shares seriously awesome posts about product delivery and how to work with teams and everything around those topics. Anything you'd like to share, Kim, before we hop?
No, just this was a really fun experience. And yeah, follow me on LinkedIn if you want to learn more and get tips on product delivery. And I've got 9 mindsets of successful product delivery. And I think I'm only on mindset number 4 that's coming next week. So stay tuned.
All right. That's awesome. Yeah. Let's follow Kim to follow on with her 9 mindsets. I've definitely been seeing them, and it is a ton of fun to kind of learn about how you think about it all. So yeah, Kim, thanks again. This was a ton of fun. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Bentley.